Hello, hello, beautiful audience. Yes, Fadad, do please smash those likes, share the link, make sure you blow us up on Reddit, especially Reddit r cryptocurrency. Shout out to John Murphy, one of the moderators out there who has been on the show and whose project we hold very dear. They take their joke coins very seriously. So thank you for being here, guys. I have with me, as you can see, the one, the only, Gert from the Vertcoin project. Gert, how are you?
Hi, everyone. How are you doing?
Awesome. And I also have, who you do not see, don't say that too fast, you do not see, CryptoPlankton. Sorry, no relation. CryptoPlankton is okay. Do over. Hold on, I'm putting the title card back up, guys. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I have CryptoPlankton and Gert from the Vertcoin project.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Oh, thank goodness this isn't live. Whew, that would have been a huge mistake. Alrighty. So, guys, appreciate you making time to be on the show. I've been talking with Blackfire, one of your community moderators. I think your principal community moderator on Discord, correct?
Yes, he's one of our head moderators.
Okay, and we've been talking about getting this interview going for weeks. So this is exciting to have you guys on the show. Really appreciate you making some time. I know that in the life of a project lead or a CEO of an organization, that you're being pulled like saltwater taffy in every direction every couple of minutes. So appreciate you making this time, guys. Make sure that you have your comments queued up or your questions queued up in the comments section. As you know, we on the show we typically ask our guests questions regarding their project, their team, their direction, their roadmap, and then some of the history and the beginnings of their project. But I'd love for you to ask questions in the comment section as well. If you're visiting from the Vertcoin community, know that this is not any kind of a weird expose. We're not trying to discover where the secret pre-mine is or what's really going on with developer funds. We're just here to learn about a new project that maybe some of us don't know enough about. And we want, rather than me offering my opinion, just looking at the white paper and looking through the repos, I like to get the info straight from the horse's mouth, and we just think that's the best thing for the community, to have a little more transparency in this conversation. So thanks for being here. Gert, that was a really long intro. Let me ask, what's your background?
Well, my background is in computer science. I was a software engineer for about 20 years, doing mostly line of business apps for local regional governments. The company I worked for built systems for working paperless. So they made like document case management systems. And one day I woke up and I figured I wanted to do something cool, like work on blockchain technology. Actually, the project I was working on was ending, so I sort of had to pick a new direction within the company as well. And they said, what would you find interesting? And I came up with blockchain technology because it always intrigued me, but I never had like the time to really dig in what it's about on a technical level. Because, to learn new things, you mostly have to spend a lot of your spare time. And then during the day you do the boring stuff, and then at night you do the fun stuff. That's basically how it works. And I figured it would be cool to turn, the fun stuff into my daily activity, and started looking into blockchain technology. I looked at some of the open source repos, and at some point I came across Vertcoin. I joined their community chat, which was still in Slack back then, before all the spam. And then, I got to talk with James, who is the lead developer of Vertcoin. And I said, well, I'm experienced in software engineering. I'm just not experienced in blockchain technology. So, with a little guidance, I think I can, make a contribution to this project. And well, I was sort of received with open arms. I got all the help I needed to get started. Started with some simple things. And now I'm contributing to Vertcoin in its entirety. So from the core wallet blockchain stuff until whatever comes along that requires my help. And in the process of learning that, I also came in touch because James works at the Digital Currency Initiative from MIT. I got in touch with them as well through contributions to their Lightning Network implementation. And I found out, or actually James told me, that they were looking for a software developer for quite some time. And so I got in talks with the DCI, and I started working for them in April. And now I'm working for them full time, remotely, but full time. And yeah, I mean, it's great to be working on things like this full time. It's such a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, let me ask, as far as the 20 years in computer programming or 20 years in software development, what were the core competencies that you developed? Are there specific languages, frameworks, or types of projects that you are most comfortable with before you got into the blockchain space?
Well, it was pretty typical, front end, back end type development. So we did a lot of our work in .NET, which is not used that frequently in blockchain, I think. There are some things in .NET, but not a whole lot. And on the client side, it was mostly JavaScript frameworks like Angular, like React. I did a lot of mobile development on iOS. So yeah, really broad. But what the experience I gained the most was the ability to learn new things and to figure out how stuff works and make it my own. And it's not something you can learn from books. You have to do it. And then each next language is easier to learn than the previous one, and it just sort of grows on you.
Very cool. And, so it sounds like you did full stack before it was a common term.
Yeah, so I worked on all parts of the stack, either individually or for a project. Did the whole thing. And in the last years at my previous job, I was mostly like an architect. You would call it an architect, I guess. It was more of a lead developer role, where I would design all the components in the system and then guide development teams into building them. So I would also do coding myself, but it was more thinking how all the pieces fit together, and then making sure that whatever architecture we agreed on was also followed in the years to come.
Very cool.
That was mostly what I did.
Very, very cool. Well, Plankton, I feel bad. You're just standing there like Hamlet's father. We need to give you a chance to talk.
Yeah. So my background is I'm still in uni. Studying computer science currently, second year. And I've sort of chopped and changed between degrees, which has kind of led to quite a diverse sort of set. But I think mainly my hobbies have given me the skill set, which has kind of benefited me the most. I really have a love for teaching itself, just in general. And that's really sort of led me to a design kind of background with a UI UX perspective, just like understanding how people use things, how people generally just empathizing with them and how to let them sort of understand what's going on. So I have this sort of tech background where I really like getting into those, like how things work. I love just investigating, and I think the whole concept of cryptocurrency is just really, really, really interesting, and that's why I got into it.
Got it. So it sounds like you kind of both share that bit of a passion for problem solving, that engineering sensibility at heart. Yeah, no, it's.
I think that the space itself has got so many different things. If you're from a quite different background, you've got not really that sort of tech area. I think there's so many areas and so many opportunities that you can get to help out with different projects, and I think it's just great. It's just given so much, so many chances to meet new people and do things you wouldn't have otherwise had a chance to do.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think blockchain has probably done more for open source, at least currently, than Linux has over the last 10 years. If that's I don't know if that's a bold statement or if it's completely inaccurate. The repos could probably prove me wrong, but it's in terms of commit history. I think that if you measure it by just raw pure commit history to public repos, I think blockchain is absolutely bringing together teams in a way that that Linux previously did, and now there's this huge rallying point behind blockchain with all the different teams. So
well, it seems to me that the parallel with Linux in terms of open source is, I think, correct. But what I don't know Linux very well in terms of the code development, so that's sort of a disclaimer to this statement. But I don't think that there's a lot of copying and forking of code that actually lives by itself after that. So yes, there are forks, but eventually the idea is to come to a central agreement and a solution, and you just have one copy of whatever's there. And like Bitcoin's code is copied quite a lot, and if you combine all the commits to all the repos, that's a lot of doubling, I think. Copying happens a lot more in blockchain, I think, than in Linux development. I'm not sure if that's true, but it seems that way.
Oh, almost certainly. No, there's no disputing that. Yeah, in terms of people forking repos and finding hundreds or even thousands of forks of a repo, where people intend to actively develop their own fork and not push anything or not submit any kind of pull request. It's man.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and I think part of that might be an incentive issue where if you launch your own coin, then you get more chance at economic incentive than if you would contribute that same code to Bitcoin. Right.
Sure, but I think a lot of cryptocurrency it's born out of an anarcho-capitalist ideology, though. A lot of crypto is. I mean, if you look at Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, it reads a bit like an anarcho-capitalist manifesto, also, just a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm talking purely from the as a developer, your incentives to. I mean, if you write something for Bitcoin, there's a chance that there's no economic gain for you. That chance is pretty big, I think. And the second is there's a chance that you all did it for nothing, that it's not even going to get accepted.
Right.
So in that sense, it's there's that's sort of a challenge, I think.
Yeah.
That you want people to contribute and cooperate in order to resolve the challenges that this whole idea of running digital money has, but it ends up there's 1,400 different people trying to solve similar problems in different ways. It might be a way to do it, but it seems rather inefficient.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. It's hard to figure out where, we're in the midst of a large experiment in terms of the number of forks, right? Like coin fork proliferation, right? So we're in the midst of still this huge growth phase, especially post bull run, where people are seeing maybe there's something to this economic incentive, like you're saying. There's no telling when it's going to slow down, right? No. So totally agree with you there.
And it's really a hard thing though, because there's obviously a lot of people just doing it because they want to fork a coin and they want to pump it, but it's
right. I hate those people. Canary coin. Not going to name names.
No, but it is. I think, as Gert pointed out, there's a lot of people who, I think, when you're comparing that to Linux, I think there's a lot of people where obviously they've forked it, they've made it, but they don't understand what they've made. And you can see this with particular design choices where it's just they're not sure, and then problems start to occur and they're just not sure why. And I think, I don't know I think it's just the whole space just needs so much more educational resources that people are just able to, like, why is Bitcoin built the way it is? And there are so many people who can't even tell you that question, like, and that leads to people believing certain other ways, say instant transactions and whatever. Like, there are reasons why Bitcoin is built the way it is. There's a reason why Bitcoin doesn't have a 1 second block time.
Right.
It's I think that greater understanding needs to sort of start shifting towards the general public. But again, there's no resources that allow people to understand it in plain English. Like, you can go deep, read deeper and understand these things, but so far I haven't really come across any resources that give you that understanding.
Well, congratulations, Plankton. You are on one today. That's the entire idea behind these developer interviews, is that we, as a community, I think there needs to be greater transparency. And in part, if somebody has the audacity to create a coin fork or to stand behind a coin project, then, sorry, this sounds bad. I'm not talking about taking away anonymity, but if somebody has the audacity to work on a coin project or on a coin fork, then they need to be able to speak to the education piece as well. And so if there aren't public conversations like this, then like Gert and I we were joking about before the stream, if there isn't an audience, then you're not, you're pardon the expression, but you're pissing into the wind. It's no good. It doesn't. You're probably causing yourself damage by standing behind projects like that. You need to be able to speak to the community, have them hear your reasons for doing it, and then talk about the distinguishing characteristics, right? The unique selling points. What does make it special? Is there any kind of innovation in the technology? Is there a specific reason that you've chosen a specific block time, or that you've chosen a specific emissions curve, or that you've chosen certain types of privacy measures, or proof of work algorithms, or node structures, other kinds of network topology for your particular blockchain? Like, I think it's, to your point, absolutely essential that we start getting into education, because without that, we're just going to keep on seeing the list of coins grow from the current, I think, 2,000 that are known, probably 3 to 4 if we count projects that are being forked or are in testnet and just aren't being publicized. It could be like cockroaches, right? Where there are 10 for every one that you see. We don't know for sure. So to get from that state of, like, the coin fork arms race, like, no, I want to get in and get valuable before everything moons. I want to get in on this rising coin market cap, and then get enough education to where the general public kind of starts to believe, okay, these are the real players, these are the real innovators, and this is where there's real value in blockchain. But education is key. You're totally right. Guys,
definitely.
Let's talk a little bit about your project. And I'm going to do a quick screen share. I'm on the Vertcoin homepage right now, so I'll share my screen so everybody else can see what I'm seeing there. And this is the Vertcoin project. I'll maximize you too, so whoever is speaking will be viewable there. And oh, sweet, my webcam died again. Well, whatever.
I can still see you though.
Awesome. Well, there's another webcam there that apparently has caused problems. But here we are, guys. We're in a shared view of the Vertcoin website, and I'm gonna zoom, enhance. But let me ask, Gert, you said that you joined the team early on, but you're not the original founder of the project.
No. So whoever founded the project is not around anymore. So we moved on to a different project. I don't know the details because that happened like way before I joined. So I think James became the lead developer pretty quickly after Vertcoin's inception, like in early 2015. I think he was the lead developer, and so the reason that Vertcoin was created initially was the fact that it all has to do with the decentralized mining, right? So at the start, we could mine Bitcoin with like anything that could compute, like a CPU and then a GPU. And then all of a sudden there were these, dedicated machines that could mine Bitcoin so efficiently that, general purpose hardware was useless for mining Bitcoin. So then Litecoin came along, which was supposed to solve that problem by having a memory intensive algorithm called Script. But then there was also an ASIC for that. So there was dedicated hardware to mine Litecoin. And then GPUs were worthless again in mining Litecoin. And it was at that time that the Lyra 2 RE, I think it was RE, like V1, so not the V2, was incepted to sort of combat ASICs and make it hard for ASICs to be developed. And at the same time, it would mean that anybody that has access to general purpose hardware like a GPU that you can buy, at your local hardware store instead of an ASIC that you have to buy from this specialized company that can decide not to sell it to you, or only sell it in bulk or sell it for too much money. And so the only problem with Lyra 2, like the first version, was that it was also the difference between CPU mining and GPU mining was very low. And maybe the idea was like good, so that you could use it on your CPU, but also on your GPU. But then it turns out that people were abusing botnets to mine Vertcoin using Lyra 2RE CPU miners that they installed maliciously on all these computers. And then the V2 came along, which was, the GPUs were much more efficient than the CPUs. And so the botnets became useless for mining Vertcoin. And that's sort of the state that we're in right now. So we have the Lyra 2RE V2 algorithm that can still be profitably mined using a GPU. So if you have a GPU, like if you're a gamer and you have a GPU and you don't do anything besides gaming, but you still have to sleep, right? So then your GPU is idle. You can earn a little money mining Vertcoin and secure the network.
Yeah, I don't know. I think to most gamers, sleep is optional, but yes.
Yeah, well,
hypothetically.
Yeah. You could even. I'm not sure. I'm not like a pro gamer. I have like a console, so that's really.
For shame.
Yeah, sorry. So, but you can even like do games when you do mining on the side on a lower intensity. So that's also still an option. So you can still game just on some lower settings. I'm not sure what gamers think of that. Maybe they hate it. I don't know. But anyway, so the key in what Vertcoin does is it tries to keep the incentives of the monetary system, like the incentives of the currency, into the hands of everybody, instead of profiting a few elite members. We want to make sure that everybody has the capability to earn a share. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big share. So if you have one GPU that's either not very powerful or it's like an older version of GPUs that's been around for a couple of years, you can still earn a little coin. That's sort of related to the amount of power that your hardware has and the amount of money that it took you to buy it.
Phenomenal.
And so,
let me, and I apologize for the interruption. Let me ask you a quick question about the beginnings of the project. You mentioned that you came on not at the very beginning, but you've been with the project now for a significant amount of time.
For a year and a half, give or take.
Okay. Yeah. I think I know that in blockchain terms, in all practical terms, in Bitcoin terms, I should say, that's not a very long time. In modern day crypto landscape terms, that's longer at least than saying, yeah, I saw the bull run and I started contributing to a repo and then they adopted me as a developer, which is the case for a lot of projects. So you were there when it was leaner.
It was a lot leaner. I think there was less. I think there was less community involvement back then. Maybe that was also sort of my rescue for being accepted, because I was one of the few people who actually volunteered to contribute, right? But I mean, it makes sense that if, given the attention that blockchain and cryptocurrencies have gotten over like the last year, since Bitcoin went up, and then suddenly all these major news outlets are saying, Bitcoin is up, and we don't know the reason, or we do know the reason, and then people start looking into it.
Well, and for their part, all that matters is that they get clicks, they get views, they sell newspapers, whatever it is they're trying to peddle, right? So if Bitcoin is trending, they've got to talk about it.
Well, that's true. But they usually, as soon as cryptocurrencies like crash, it's a better news story than when they go up.
Right. Right.
Because,
investor loses millions.
Yeah, people lose like 70% of their value. These idiots that invested in all this money,
right, taking out mortgages and lines of credit.
Well, that's never a good idea to take lines of credit, but whatever. I think what differs Vertcoin from maybe some other projects. I don't follow many other projects, so maybe I'm not the best person to say this, but
okay. Well, let me ask it this way. I'll reframe the question as far as what distinguishes it. Let me ask what problem, and this is kind of like VC speak, right, or like or Silicon Valley speak. If you could boil it down to a high level problem, what is the high level problem that Vertcoin seeks to solve? What was the initial problem that the initial team sought out to fix?
Maybe it's good if Plankton says something also, because I feel like I'm doing all
sure.
He can answer this question just as well as I can.
Yeah, sure. So the main problem at its core, Vertcoin is quite similar to Bitcoin, except it differs in the decentralized mining aspect. So we differ in the fact that we view GPUs as being the most decentralized long-term option for distributing consensus around the world. And we disagree that ASICs long-term will actually start to dissipate at the levels that they say they will. So we think that long-term, the ASICs will not proliferate, they will not spread as far, and the hash rate won't distribute as much as using GPUs. So the long-term goal for Vertcoin is having a more distributed hash rate. And obviously, by using GPUs, we've selected a device that has enough hash rate that is safe and is widely available. But obviously, short term, you're exposing yourself to lower amounts of hash rate where you are you're vulnerable. So until you become the dominant GPU coin, like Ethereum, that tends to, you have to sort of, short term, you're obviously not going to succeed, but long term, you should end up better than Bitcoin in terms of mining decentralization.
Nice. Hey, totally agreed. Some people would, we'll get back around to that in a moment. As far as mining pools versus ASICs versus GPUs versus now FPGAs, I'm sure you're aware. They're on the scene. In fact, I'm going to see GPU hoarder David Stanfill in person this tomorrow. I'm a little tired, but within 24 hours, I'll be shaking his hand and saying, "David, you look even more beautiful in person than I thought." So these things exist. Is what I'm saying. We'll talk about it in just a minute. But let me ask, as far as the central problem that Vertcoin intended to solve, it says right here on the main page, Vertcoin is a peer-to-peer currency focused on decentralization. Is that what the team means when they say decentralization? Decentralization of mining, or what?
No, I don't think it's just mining. So if you also want to decentralize, like not just mining is part of the consensus, right? So you also have like the full nodes, and you also have wallet software in general. But if people don't run their own wallets and have control of their own keys and effectively own their own money and protect their own money, it's bound to end up in a centralized fashion. So what you'll see is that ease of use should not be traded for centralization or for decentralization, however you look at trading it. But I mean, you shouldn't make things easier to use by centralizing them, because we already have that. We call it a bank. It's really easy to use. I can just log in, I can access my money, I can send it to someone else. We have that. But the idea of cryptocurrencies was the fact that these banks have, you know, some shortcomings in the sense that they're part of a system that, well, you don't necessarily have to agree with. And if you want to get out of that system, you sort of have to take control of your own money. So replacing the banking system with a centralized cryptocurrency seems like a lot of work with no gain. So that, I mean, decentralization goes further than mining is what I'm mainly saying. So we want to make sure that everybody has control of their own money, and there can really be their own, well, bank would be a bit weird word to use, but effectively they would be.
Got it. That makes sense.
I can cover this one a bit more, actually.
Sure.
So Vertcoin is it's very sort of down to the fundamentals, down to the basics. So obviously we just covered the mining aspect, but as Gert mentioned, it's people are sort of copping out with these systems that are third-party trusted systems, and we, yeah, and as Gert said, we've come into this going, okay, let's build something which is better. Let's build something which is better than banks. And at the moment, we've basically what we're seeing is we're building something which is the same as banks. We really want to build a system where it's completely free, like completely trustless. So building out every single part. So mining is the one end where you want to distribute the consensus equally across the world. And then second, you've got things like Lightning Network, where you've got projects like Litbox, which is then trying to solve the shortcomings of Lightning Network in terms of being the trusted aspect, so doing justice transactions, etc. So there's other parts of the spectrum that you need to fix, and we want to really do that full stack trustless financial system where other people are kind of just copping out and going, oh, let's just integrate with Coinbase, or let's just do this. Like, there's no one who's really looking at every single aspect of the spectrum and going like, we need to make this work from end to end. And it's really funny. You don't see many people doing it, but that's why I'm here. So
awesome.
I started Bitcoin doing it. So
awesome. Well, Plankton, let me ask you. And I didn't ask before. I know that you're still at this point in development. You're still committed to remaining anonymous for the purposes of your involvement with the Vertcoin project. What can you tell us about the history of your involvement, if not a bit of your background, and what makes you what brings you to Vertcoin every day?
So I've been around probably I got here just after Gert. Also, I think I remember you being in Slack quite early and seeing Gert and James actually talk. But I think if you go back to the history of when I first heard about Bitcoin ages, like I think it was late 2011 or so, early 2012. Anyway, I had my mate talking about it, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I'm like, this is really cool. And everyone else was like, oh my God, like this is stupid. Or I'm like, no, this is really, really, really cool.
No, I agree. I was a national trainer for Samsung at that time, and I made a joke in front of a large audience of like, these are highly technical people at Samsung headquarters at Samsung Mobile, and they were like, pfft. So no, not very few people caught the vision. So kudos, Plankton.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, and I think I talked about it for like a week straight. I'm like, this is so cool, like, and I just started reading about it, and that's really sort of, and then I kind of just forgot about it for a while, and then I sort of saw it pop up in the news a couple of times. But I just love tech. I just love exploring and looking at things, and I think this whole thing, what's really inspired and captured me is that image of really doing it properly, like doing the trustless aspect, doing the be your own bank, but just do it right. Like don't cop out, just do it right. And that's what really brings me to Vertcoin every day. Other than that, it's really the community itself. It's great group of people, and generally attracts people people who, I don't know, just, I think from an outsider, it's quite hard. It's hard to see because just it's not that obvious in terms of being something that's morally right in something which is such a pump and dumpy space. It's very hard to find something which is people are doing things for the right reasons. But that's really what I've found here, and that's why I keep coming back.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, it's great to hear that you guys have that you each got the passion for what it is that Vertcoin is doing that keeps you anchored to the project. Let me ask, as far as specific problems that when you both came onto the team, specific problems that you wanted to solve. Hey, we got Big Club UK in the house offering us a pizza in the comments. Thanks, Big Club. Man cannot live on conversations about crypto alone. Appreciate you giving us a pizza emoji. But when you guys first came on, to the project, what were some problems, some technological hurdles, or some problems that you saw needed to be solved that you were instrumental in helping to solve? You can toot your own horn. It's the right time.
Well, I have to say, I mean, when I first came on the Vertcoin team, I was sort of a junior blockchain developer, or not even that. I was like a newbie blockchain developer. So it was hard. I mean, it was possible for me to see where the problems were. The problems were obviously in scaling. It's like where every blockchain has the problem right now. It doesn't scale. And that's like, that's a thing with blockchains. They don't scale, right? And so when I first learned about the Lightning Network, that was around that time. So Bitcoin was still struggling to activate segregated witness on its network when Vertcoin already had it. And so it was possible to do transactions with Lightning Network on the Vertcoin mainnet. And I think it was one of the first things that I published for Vertcoin. I think it's still on my YouTube somewhere. It was like doing a Lightning Network transaction on Vertcoin. And it was the concept of taking things that are on the blockchain and then sort of taking them off, doing things with them, and then, settling back on chain. It seemed like magic. And I started, looking at it, how it works. And it hit me that whoever gets the scaling right, so whoever gets a way to reach like 1 billion people with cryptocurrency, that's like the scale you want this to work on, right? You don't want this to, just be a couple nerds using a blockchain. That's not what we set out to do. The idea is, everybody can use this as a means of exchanging value without, being extorted for, fees. And so the Lightning Network thing really hit me. And it took me a lot of time to understand how it really works and to see how I could contribute to it. And it took me a lot of time, like up until now, right? So it's like only since the past 4 or 5 months that I'm actively contributing to it. But it's a long time in the making. And I felt that, the whole scaling thing with Bitcoin, that was the biggest problem at that time, like by far.
Scaling is still a problem on everyone's minds when it comes to the top 4, right? Bitcoin Cash. Roger Ver is, he's on the warpath still, right? Telling everybody that increasing block size is the only way forward. I'm not gonna disagree with him here. What I will say is that there are a lot of people who do disagree with him. And then you have everybody talking about how do we scale Ethereum? In a post CryptoKitties world, Ethereum was supposed to be like awesome, right? Rock solid. But in a post CryptoKitties world, we see, nope, there are problems there too. Everybody needs to think about scale.
Yeah, essentially, blockchains just don't scale. They're not made to scale. And you can tweak all the parameters you want, but it's gonna deduct from the original decentralized idea behind the blockchain. So if you have a blockchain that's so big that it can only fit a couple of people's computer in the world, then that's centralized, right? So, like really solving the scaling issue while maintaining the decentralization and maintaining the trustlessness and maintaining, whatever made Bitcoin so interesting, whatever made you say back in 2011, like this Bitcoin thing is really a cool thing. And then all of a sudden it hits a couple roadblocks. It doesn't make the idea behind it any worse. It's a roadblock. You have to overcome it. And there's a couple ways you can overcome it.
Or 2,000 ways, as we're seeing with all the Satoshi-like blockchains.
There's a bunch of projects that are tweaking the blockchain layer parameters to see if that solves the problem. I think it doesn't. And so you can make what Vertcoin did was, increase the number of blocks by 4. So we have 4 times as many blocks. That means that you have 4 times 7 transactions per second. So it's still ridiculously bad at scaling. In a way, if you want to scale it to, 1 billion people, you need to fix it better than just saying, let's do more of what we already did. It seemed like, I don't think it's a solution. I mean, the whole idea behind the Lightning Network seems like a solution. I'm not saying that it is. There are still challenges to overcome there as well. But at least we're working towards something that should scale better without sacrificing some of the properties that make Bitcoin so interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is kind of a delicate balancing act between all the different functionalities that everyone wants to bring in, and versus scale, versus usability, versus speed, versus the need, as Plankton so aptly brought up before, the need to keep things secure. So maybe you don't move as fast. There's a reason that, leaving blockchain aside, there's a reason that wire transfers don't happen instantaneously. There's a reason that I can't transfer 5 million USD to wherever you are right now in USD.
I think it's important. Yeah. Sorry, I think it's really important to note that still so many people don't realize that there are trade-offs for some specifications. They think they can just crank up block size and block time, just crank down block time forever, and it's fine. No, these things exist in a balance, and there is a purpose. The problem with obviously in decreasing the block time so much is you start to get block orphaning. And it's just, it doesn't get any better. The lower it gets, the worse it gets, which is going to hurt your security long term, and people aren't going to mine your coin.
Yeah.
So it's just basic things like that. It's that people are just totally unaware of. But as far as the greater scaling debate, James really introduced me to that I was back in when I think we moved to Discord. There was a channel called Lightning, and it would be sort of James's playground where people just come in and just, if you want to test out Lit or just Lightning Network or just talk about it in general. It was really there where I sort of learned about the trade-offs of distributed systems and where the shortcomings were, and what we can actually do to improve them. And before blockchain, before everything else, distributed systems have existed for a long time. And the problems that distributed systems face in general, and this isn't just limited to blockchain, they suffer from very specific problems. And these very specific problems are the same problems that we have been tackling today. So when people say that they've just randomly solved a problem and this crack team has done it and it's like, well, no, this problem has been these people have studied this academically for a long time, and no, you can't just solve it like that. It's very likely that in some case, some routes of development are impossible. And from my experience so far, it seems that in this case, the Lightning Network is the best way to move it forward. And unfortunately, you've got this debate between people. As you know, the blockchain space is very I believe this without any sort of empirical evidence or actual evidence. So people are just willy-nilly saying this will work because X, Y without actually checking.
Right. Yeah. It's a non sequitur. That does not follow.
I believe.
Yeah.
It's more of a the dev told me so I believe, or it's just sort of almost like a religious thing. They kind of just believe it because they want to.
Well, it's like non-representative sample. I'll use a poor example. We're going to go to politics, gentlemen. We'll talk about religion next. Watch out. But to use a poor example that people are, it's hotly debated, hotly contested here in the United States that no, you need gun control is this big thing. We've got to use all these other countries, and it's like no, actually, Oz is not a very good representative sample, and the measures that they took are not a perfect one-to-one correlation. Or, looking at Japan or looking at Norway or looking at any other country, when you talk about large-scale governance is all I'm saying. I'm not taking a stance in that debate. What I am saying is that when people talk about things without a proven working model, it's much harder to speak with that level of confidence like you're talking about, Plankton.
Yeah, it is a very interesting debate. And I think largely you've got people... You see a lot of these in the token development world. You see people who base their choices on economic choices rather than, so they're economists. So they say this will work because this, and then all the computer scientists are like, that just won't work. It just won't work, and they don't really listen. So it's you've got these two sides going this, and because of this mentality in the crypto space, basically. Because there's so much money in it, people aren't willing really to listen.
Profit motive is just way too strong. You see a market cap, a total market cap that is approaching $500 billion, and people just, all reason goes out the window, right? They very much chase that profit motive. Guys, let me switch gears here just a little bit, and let's talk about currently today some of the problems that the team wants to solve. Oh, and I should also ask. Plankton, that was a dig. I can tell by your accent that you're clearly from New York City, so your anonymity has been knocked down a peg, sir. But I kid. I know based on time zones that we're speaking internationally here, so probably one of us should be asleep. Probably.
Plankton should be.
I don't sleep.
Well, I appreciate you making time for this. It really means a lot. Because I know that I've gotten some comments down in the comment section, right? Hey, if you want to gain our trust, stop being anonymous. For my part, I absolutely support anonymity in this space. Guys, if we're all here because of Satoshi, by all means, answer me exactly in the comments who Satoshi is. And I will grant you, no, you're right. Having non-anonymous devs is the most important thing in blockchain. But I will do so tongue-in-cheek. Because clearly, we still don't know who Satoshi is or who he is or she is or they are or it is. And you hear me say it on my show often. For all we know, it very well may be the NSA or a large state actor. We don't know. We still don't know. Stranger things have happened. SE Linux, sponsored by the U.S. government. The Tor project, sponsored by the U.S. government. All kinds of stuff that you think is there for our protection and privacy, actually sponsored by U.S. Department of Defense funding. So we don't know. Don't knock anonymity. I choose to support anonymous devs and at least go to this level of open discussion. But I would never ask you to reveal identity for the purpose of your project, right? In order to say now we can claim that Vertcoin is legitimate because now we know who Plankton is. I don't think that's the most important criterion. I don't know.
No, I don't think so either. I think, people have to, make up their own mind on who they trust and who they don't trust. I can't do that for them. There's people who are not anonymous that you shouldn't trust. And there's people that are anonymous that you can trust pretty good. It's not like, even if you're anonymous, it's not like we're hiding, right? So you can just, we're reachable. Well, Plankton is reachable almost around the clock. I don't know if he ever sleeps, but that's a whole other discussion. But he's always there to answer any question you have. And I think anonymity I mean, invisibility is more harmful than anonymity. So if you're there and people don't know who you are in real life, but they can see what you contribute, they can discuss about your thoughts, about what you think, about then what's the harm? You can choose not to trust, and move along. That's fine.
Right. Yeah. No. Totally. There's plenty of space, but plenty of other coins you can go support if you really want to.
Yeah, that's sure.
But let's talk a little more about Vertcoin and a little bit about the problems you guys are solving today. Let's talk a little bit about roadmap right now. Current. I shouldn't say. Maybe I should say technological hurdles you want to overcome, not problems per se. Not exploits, not attacks or anything. But what's something? And pardon my ignorance. What's something on the roadmap right now that the Vertcoin team is actively working on?
Well, I think there's two major things going on right now. One is the lit box idea, which is a way to make the Lightning Network usable by average users from whatever device they want to use. We have some different ideas about that than all the other projects that are doing something on Lightning Network right now. But I think it's good if Plankton details that. But another thing that we're working on is, and that's something that's been like in the news for the past 1.5, 2 months, is regarding network protection or hash rate in general, and the fact that there's a marketplace where you can rent hash rate to attack blockchains, and it's called NiceHash.
Oh yeah. I had Bitcoin Gold on the program not long after they were attacked, and the attackers, confirmed 18 million they got away with.
Yeah, so that's like a real. We're seeing something that has been the case all along. So this is not new. The fact that you can 51% a blockchain if you have enough hash rate, and the fact that if you do, you can double spend and you can cheat somebody out of a lot of money. That's not new. The only thing is that the whole idea of renting hash rate from a marketplace in order to execute such an attack, which means that you don't have any, capital investment needed. You can just, make the way in of saying, okay, if I spend this amount of money, I have enough hash rate to attack this blockchain. And that means that if I have enough coins in that blockchain, I can do a double spend and, cheat somebody out of more money than it cost me. So it's important for people handling a lot of money on blockchains that are susceptible to attacks like this to mitigate that problem. So that's why you see exchanges increasing the number of confirmations needed before they credit your account. That's because it's a real risk.
Well, it's a way for them to delay the block time. It's a way for them to manipulate the blockchain in a way that maybe should have already been built in.
Sorry?
It's a way to manipulate the block time, and it's a way to modify block time in such a way that it possibly should have been planned and architected from the beginning. When you wait for that many confirmations, essentially what you're saying is you're achieving consensus ex post facto. It's a brilliant manipulation, but it's something that frankly it shouldn't, that the onus shouldn't necessarily be on exchanges. It should probably be thought of by devs and those teams and built into the protocols and networks before exchanges are even involved. This is my take on it. One possible way of looking at it.
Well, yeah, obviously that's one way of looking at it. But essentially, how I look at it is the fact that because it is an open, decentralized network, you have to account for bad actors that use features of that blockchain to manipulate other people. And the fact that you can rent more hash rate than the network has on a marketplace, and that has like a price ticket, and you can just do the math and see if I spend this much money here, I run it for this long, and in the meanwhile, I just make a transaction that I can reverse later. I mean, you can solve it by adding hash rate to the network, right? So if we would say, if we would add like thousands of GPUs to the Vertcoin network, then the price of that attack would immediately go up. And if it goes up far enough to not be nice hashable, which is a term nowadays.
Well, they're fast. Those guys are slippery. The new variants of Kryptonite, they added within a couple of weeks.
Okay, but I mean, forking to a different algorithm is not something that you do overnight, right? So
but what I'm saying is forking to another algorithm every 6 months is not necessarily a strategy to overcome nice hash either. They can pivot within weeks. It's not like hardware development for ASICs. They're adding your publicly available algo to their pool. And it's done.
And your algorithm has to be publicly available ahead of time, because you cannot just deploy a fork by releasing software. You release software like a couple months in advance, and then whoever looks at the code knows, okay, they're forking to this algorithm, so then include this in our nice hash software, and then we can do that algorithm too. So that's one of the challenges that we face right now, and we have to come up with a solution. And I mean, what we previously did by preventing ASICs was one thing. So
on that note, let's use that as a jumping off point. I'm getting a lot of questions in the comment section about Lyra 2 Rev 3. And I'm probably butchering the name, but that's shorthand. Lyra 2 Rev 3. Getting questions about that. It's on the roadmap, correct?
I don't think that is on the roadmap.
Okay,
I can answer that.
The commenters are convinced that it is.
Okay.
I can answer that one. So, what's meant by the revisions of Lyra? It's more like the tweak. So it's a tweak just essentially to kill ASICs. It's a minor revision.
So to your N, a bit like the N and K numbers in Equihash. Everyone's moving to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So in the first case, I was obviously CPUs, and then in this case, there is no point in. Well, if you go to 3, well, what's that really fixing? Unless there's an ASIC and you want to just do it quickly, but then it's really quite hard to do a fork. So it's not easy. So, or preparation wise, it's really what we want to solve is, okay, that's great and all, but we want to solve the nice hash problem, and you also want to think of the field programmable gate arrays. So you've got multiple things we want to think about. So just simply doing a Rev 3 isn't that. There's no point in doing that one. So there would be what we're trying to do now. What we're doing now is putting together a algorithm, also a new algorithm, which will attempt to face these problems.
Okay. Awesome.
So
I'm
that's
obligated.
The answer to the Rev 3. Yeah.
Awesome.
It won't be called Rev 3.
Okay, very cool. I'm obligated to ask because I spend a lot of time around Ogata Company. I spend a lot of time around the minority team, and so I'm sure you've heard of Prague POW. It's hit your radar, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
It has, yeah.
Impressions, good, bad, indifferent.
I think I haven't looked at it in detail because there was some opposition already. I'm not sure if Plankton is aware of what the sort of dislikes were into that solution.
I just talked to James briefly. I think there was a couple of problems with it that we saw, but ultimately we won't be going for that, but we'll be going for something else. So, but largely we've kept that just to ourselves, obviously, to start with. So, in terms of details, we want to move it further along in terms of just finalizing what we're going to do, and then obviously it becomes public. But the purpose of this will be you can't really. There's no way around it for all these other. All these problems that we're trying to tackle.
Got it. Yeah, fair enough. Hey, to your point,
we just saw that as better. We see that as a much better solution. Okay.
Sure. Hey, no problem. I know a lot of the Equihash teams who were directly affected by Bitmain's announcement of the Z9 Mini and then the Z9. Well, in some cases, they didn't fork at all. They said, we're fine. We've got enough momentum. We're too big to fail because they were the biggest blockchain. They were sucking up the most hash rate, so they weren't motivated. And then others said, we'll just do some tweaks to the N and K numbers. So we now have Equihash 1445. And then I think Equihash 2097, I think, is the other that's popular. Yeah, I'm forgetting the exact numbers there, but hey, totally get it, And this is not me trying to suggest or lead the interview in that direction. It's just something that's kind of a lot of teams have talked about, right? And proof of work. And this is part of why I've been talking to so many different teams, is just to ask about proof of work and ask about decentralization and try to get a broader public conversation, maybe even a sort of a consortium going between coin projects to have them talking. Because I think, at least for the legit projects that have real momentum and real development mass behind them, right? You guys are hitting with heavy weight right now in terms of adoption and user base. I think there needs to be a lot more public conversation surrounding proof of work, especially in the face of so many ASICs being developed and their development times apparently decreasing. So,
yeah, they're becoming increasingly efficient at building ASICs, right? So yeah, I guess some projects, some even publicly sort of surrendered to ASICs. They said, well, there's no reason to keep fighting this. Let's just accept the fact that they're here and roll with it. But yeah, it doesn't sit well with Vertcoin and with our team that the machines that keep your blockchain safe are produced by, well, basically one company that has the power to sell them or not sell them to anyone. And general purpose hardware, on the other hand, you cannot not sell GPUs to miners, but keep selling them to gamers. It's a product that you sell. You cannot decide who you sell it to. I can just go to the local hardware store and buy one. But for miners, it's for dedicated hardware, it's a different story. And it's not in the hands of everyone to buy one. So that seems sort of unfair advantage to the people that have access to devices like that.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. It's certainly, in terms of the number of participants, maybe not the total hash rate, but the number of participants, unique participants who are also more likely to run a full node and actually operate a single wallet GPU. I'm right there with you. And the cost of entry, right? The cost of entry is not onerous, falls within what most marketers would call the impulse buy range for CapEx, where every single month the average American, so I'm told, I don't even know what that looks like anymore. Post-economic downturn, throw that term out the window. But the average American should be able to purchase between $50 to $200 every month on an impulse buy without breaking the bank. Yeah. That was what GPUs cost once.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. But yeah, adding a GPU to your growing home mining garden was very approachable.
Yeah. So, well, there's still the problem with power, right? So the difference in power cost across the world is also, I can't mine anything at home profitably because residential electricity prices are just too high over here. Where in other countries it's completely different.
You got to name numbers, Gert. We got to know. Tell us the dirty. What's the price per kilowatt hour?
Over here it's 27 euro cents.
Jeez.
Ish. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's partly because I have green wind power and things like that. I sort of find that important. If you don't mind burning coal, then you can shave 1 cent off it. But that's about it. So most of it is tax anyway. 7 cents is the price of the electricity and 20 cents is network cost and tax mainly.
Got it. Wow, that is still nuts.
Yeah, it sucks to live here if you want to mine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Yeah, find a really good co-location facility, I guess, offshore somewhere. Man,
I might.
So let me ask, because we're a little over an hour now, and I told you that we were going to shoot for about 45 minutes to an hour. How are you guys on time? Do we have some time to ask a few more questions here? I'm starting to get some really good stuff in the comments, and I've got a few more.
I got like 10, 15 minutes left.
Cool. Okay, let's do our bonus round here. Call them lightning round.
That's a fun pun, by the way.
Yeah, right. Right.
I think that's probably a good thing to cover really quickly, actually. The other part we were talking about the decentralized, the other sort of slice to decentralization that the Vertcoin team works on, and obviously Gert and James both work at the DCI. So there's that the lit side to it, and then obviously it goes hand in hand with the Vertcoin project, which is Litbox. Probably just cover that quickly, and then that completes everything, if you want.
Got it. Yeah. Well, that tells us about the roadmap, certainly. So Litbox, apparently, I've got this opened up right here, and the tagline is "Making Lightning Network user friendly." There you go. You guys got me to say it. Jeez.
There's actually a new website coming shortly, but the tagline for that one is Litbox, the router of crypto. So that's a more accurate title.
Okay, well, talk to me and use 5-year-old explanation, as though you're speaking to a 5-year-old, and as though you only have like 2 minutes to explain. Okay,
so the concept is that so on Lightning Network, you need to watch your transactions. Otherwise, someone can send their signal, and then your funds, obviously, you have to watch your funds, otherwise you disappear. It's like everyone puts their money on the table, and you have to be watching your money. So obviously, you want something that sort of does this for you. So Vertcoin's idea is that you have a box in your house, like a router. It sits in your house, and it does all these things for you. So in essence, it's like a little box sits next to your router and processes your money for you on Lightning Network. That's really the essence of what it is. I guess you could call it a little bank box, but it solves that problem of having to trust someone else with your justice transactions. So you really have control all the way from the core protocol layer to the Lightning Network layer.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And you gotten some praise in the comments, guys, for being one of the first projects to be properly set up to take advantage of Lightning Network. Let me ask a little bit about Project Lineage. And I apologize that I didn't do all of my homework before jumping into this interview. I like to let these interviews unfold organically. So I hope you'll forgive me. I know the project does have legacy since before you came onto the project, and it's been around a bit longer than a lot of other coin projects. So pardon my ignorance. That's a phrase you hear me use a lot. Pardon my ignorance. What project does Vertcoin most closely resemble? Is it a Satoshi-like blockchain forked from Bitcoin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. We could have started with that. I should have asked that first. So awesome. So most closely resembles Bitcoin, ergo Lightning Network, atomic swaps with Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
It's as I mentioned before. It's basically Bitcoin except the mining aspect and the layer 2 focus. Awesome.
I know Bitcoin Gold got in trouble by not doing much else other than mining. It's I think again we are focused on you see other coins just implementing Lightning. I think Vertcoin's endeavor is a bit more. There's a bit more to it than that. Lit itself, Gert can probably talk about. Most people don't really notice that's actually it's not actually part of the Bolt family currently. It's a separate implementation it has a slightly different architecture to the Bolt family. So a good explanation is that currently all the Lightning networks are separate. So you've got the Bitcoin Lightning Network, you've got the Litecoin Lightning Network, and then they all exist next to each other, and then they can talk to each other. But currently, the way it's built is they can't talk to each other easily, at least in a transaction point of view. So with Lit, every coin is on a singular Lightning network. So in that case, you could make a payment so that I have
we can actually make a payment that goes from me through Gert to you, Seth, and I can pay in, say I have a channel open with Gert, and then we can hop around, and then you get paid in Bitcoin if you had a channel, obviously if that path is open. So it gets around that issue of having to implement some mechanism to deal with that. And we just, at that layer, it's just less complex having to deal with those kind of things.
Awesome. Yeah, very, very cool. Well, guys, I mean, lest it seem like I'm not impressed, I am. I'm thoroughly impressed with the effort that your team has gone through, and really appreciate you guys spending the time here. Let me ask you a couple of other very direct and but carefully directed questions so that we make good use of the remaining time. And those questions are: how many other developers are there? Talk to me about team. I can pull the team up here on the website, but I'd like you to very quickly give me a high-level overview of team and why they are with you.
Yeah, I can do that. So obviously we have James. James is our lead developer. He's been with the project for a long time. We have Joe, who worked on the one-click miner, which we didn't cover in this talk yet. So I'm gonna just call it out.
Yeah, I know. So I know that Son of Attack did a really good job of covering that. So big shout out to Matthew over at Son of Attack. You guys check out his video if you haven't already seen it. So he's covered the one-click miner and the latest revision very well.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, I say I don't do my homework, but occasionally I do. Crib notes.
So we have Eric. Eric works mostly on. He talks to exchanges a lot, which is not very fun to do, but he does it anyway. And he helps around. I think most of us are pretty, multi. How do you say that? We have, a lot of things that we can do. So most of us help out wherever we can. So Brian is still on here, but I think he is no longer around.
He died.
No,
I'm sorry.
No, that's not a real fun joke, but okay.
Yeah, I apologize. Anyway, I don't take very seriously. I apologize, guys. Other than your efforts, I don't take very much seriously on the show.
Okay. Well, that's a good. So, no, I mean, so Brian did a lot of the marketing, but we have like a whole marketing team since then. So this is like just the development team, but there's a whole bunch of people who are, helping with marketing initiatives. And that's like since the start of this year. So that's fairly new, but, they're doing a lot of great things. They're, getting us this interview, for instance. So there's a bunch of other people here. I think Plankton is here. We have a recent addition. I have trouble pronouncing his name, Surya.
That sounds really good, actually. It's very good pronunciation.
No, so there's like 10, 11 people. I mean, not everybody is as active as, we're all volunteers, right?
Sure. So
none of us
maybe let's boil it down to a concept of
money.
Yeah, let's boil it down to perhaps this concept of core development. People who are actively developing. Would that be maybe a handful of individuals like yourself and Plankton? There are maybe 3, 4.
I think James, Joe, me, Alex, who works on the miner, JK14, who works a lot of. He also does a lot of work on mining and miners, like hardcore C++ stuff that I generally think is way too complex.
Somebody's got to know the level.
Yeah, so I think it's like 5 or 6 people who are actively developing code, if that's your question.
Yes.
And then we have people on the development team who are, helping out in, lawyer stuff, like we're setting up a foundation to cover Vertcoin's interests.
If I may, really quickly to my audience, anybody who's trolling in the comment section, I believe that is so important. You have to have funds to be able to continue to do business. There's so many teams who start strictly as a community effort and have a lot of open source development and contribution, but then are not prepared when the ill winds of fate blow and they get hit by litigation, for example, or they get hit by some kind of other problem that was unforeseen. So being able to retain counsel is a big deal. Being able to pay developers is a big deal. So kudos to you for having that that foresight and thinking maybe we should ensure that we have enough to draw from to move forward?
Well, I mean, the foundation is not strictly from a financial perspective. I mean, the reason for starting the foundation was more the fact that legally, Vertcoin does not exist. So if you want to make Vertcoin own something like a copyright, like a trademark, it's not possible to make Vertcoin own anything. We have like a developer fund that people can contribute to, where, for instance, we can pay lawyers from to set up a foundation.
Sure, but on behalf of whom? To your point, who's the entity?
It's basically one of the developers who manages the fund. So if you want Vertcoin to own it, we have to, establish a Vertcoin first, and that's what the foundation will be.
Awesome. That's great. Very practical.
Yeah, I mean, we Joe at some point tried to get a code signing certificate so that we could have the one-click miner be signed by Vertcoin, and it was impossible. I mean, we couldn't convince like whoever VeriSign who gives out these certificates. Like, I mean, we exist. Look at our website. We've been here for 4 years. Give us a certificate. No. If there's no legal body that is Vertcoin, then you're not getting a certificate. So,
wow.
I mean, it's out of practical sense that we want something to be able to own stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
That makes sense. I think Monero just stole their certificate. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
They did not. Right? They totally didn't. But guys, this is really practical. These sounds like very practical. These sounds like the growing pains of any other tech startup. And that makes a lot of sense to me. It really does. There are a lot of teams that aren't thinking that far ahead. This clearly signals to me that you intend to have a bright future for your efforts, even if the team changes, even if the roster changes. So that's awesome.
I mean, if you set up a foundation and you have like ground rules within the foundation that it has to act in the best interest of the project, then you can switch people around without deducting from that goal, that vision that you're trying to achieve. And I think a foundation is, it's a hassle to set it up. I mean, we rather wouldn't, but it makes sense to have one in order to, get things properly structured, organized, however you want to call it.
Right. Well, also helps in terms of project maintainership. No, there's no one person that can take the ball and go home, right? I'm taking my repos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's open source, so nobody can take anything. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, you see where I'm going there, though.
We had trouble in the past. Like if somebody that manages a repo disappears, then try to convince a company like GitHub that the code is really yours, and they have to make you an admin or a super admin.
Well, now
they say, we can contact the person by email, and then we say, well, he's not going to respond.
Well, now under new management, good luck approaching Microsoft about that.
Oh yeah, Microsoft.
This is the struggle is real. I mean, the larger centralized authorities that run so much of the world that we know.
Yeah.
Centralization just keeps on happening. So let me ask a couple of other specific questions. We can fill a whole hour
with that, by the way.
I'm sure.
More than that, even.
So let me ask, as far as a couple of very specific questions, ASIC resistance. We talked about it briefly, but just in a broad sense, why does ASIC resistance matter if total network hash rate and larger pooling resources pose more of a threat?
So then I guess it's a trade-off, right? So if you consider centralized mining with more hash rate to be preferable over having less hash rate temporarily, I mean, if your project becomes prosperous and successful, then everybody wants to mine it. So at some point there will be enough hash rate. But I mean, it's true that it's easier to protect a network with high hash rate with ASICs, but I mean, it's a trade-off. And yeah, I mean, we choose the other side of that trade-off. We think decentralization is more important in the long game. And we have to fix whatever problems arise from that choice. That's awesome. That's our struggle.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. That's your public stance, and that you're very committed to it. I know there are a lot of teams that had a hard time showing leadership in their ability to choose a stance and stick with it as more ASICs were announced.
I think it's important to note also that it's not really ASIC resistance per se. It's that choosing the consensus tool that allows the most distributed setup with an optimal amount of hash rate. And that's just come into being as being GPUs. Like, we just didn't decide one day that, GPUs, they sound like a good idea, let's do this. Like, that's just it's just happened. Like, obviously the CPUs, like Vertcoin is just as much CPU resistant as it is ASIC resistant. So and also in the future, it's obviously going to be targeting FPGAs. So it's not really ASIC resistant. It's just trying to equalize the playing field as much as possible.
Sure, might be fair to characterize it as presently ASIC deferred.
Yeah, but I think it's just really important. Something really important to really highlight, because people really misunderstand the whole, like, why is GPU mining important at all? They don't see it's part of a larger picture that this is the choice because it's not just because we chose it arbitrarily.
Right, and I think the bull run really underscored that for a lot of alts when participation in mining reached all-time high. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think there's any way that could have been fully understood by any of the coin projects just how important GPUs were to the network in terms of botnet resistance. To use that phrase.
And botnets are still huge, and there's some people who still advocate CPU mining, and we're just sort of scratching our heads going, botnets are a thing, right? Yeah.
Right.
And then they're just saying, but we're ASIC resistant. It's like, well, yeah, but botnets are just as bad.
Right. Awesome. Well, hey, gents, I appreciate you both weighing in on that question of, and I typically frame it as air quotes, ASIC resistance, because the other reality is there is no algo for which Bitmain cannot develop hardware, period.
No, and there's no ASIC proof.
No, it does not exist.
It doesn't exist.
Right. So I'm glad that it's such a breath of fresh air to see how incredibly level-headed you guys are about this, how much you acknowledge the facts that face every project. So let's ask, as far as proof of work in general, where do you believe proof of work in general is headed?
Is headed in what sense?
So we've talked about different configurations of the network, whether it be a mix of CPUs, which typically turn into botnets, GPUs, which appear to be more decentralized in terms of the number of participants, if perhaps not the total percentage of the hash rate, and then ASICs. In terms of proof of work, the actual algorithms, where do you see all of this headed, or the total participation and the spend on OpEx? Just certainly in your country, Gert, it's not even profitable, right, to do proof of work. So if everybody thought as you did, there's so many coin projects that are priced out,
right? So there's some economy of scale when it's about power. So if you would like run a huge CPU farm, then but that's because there's like a weird I'm not sure how to call it.
Tiered system, maybe tiered pricing.
Yeah, there's a weird tier system. So the more power you use, the less tax per kilowatt hour you pay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know, but so if you do it like on a large scale, or if you have a large company that already uses a lot of power and it's just in that upper tier already, then adding the extra power usage for mining is, well, not as expensive as it would be for me at home. So that there's that. But I mean,
but then it's centralized if it's only in the hands of tier 1 data centers.
Well, I'm not. I mean, tier 1 data centers are the complete opposite of residential mining. So there might be some space in between.
Right. So let's talk about the future of proof of work, and in terms of like, where do you see this going? Certainly, there are economic realities in countries like yours, and then economic disincentives, and then there are problems that are solved by scale. But then, if that scale leads to centralization, where's all this headed? It looks like an arms race to me.
So I think you can tackle this a number of different ways. I think the ultimate solution is that the true sort of paradise doesn't really exist. It's about leveling the playing field as much as possible, which is the answer. I think you're never going to achieve that sort of perfect world, but you can get damn close to it.
Sure.
So I think there's a number of different ways you can kind of try to solve this whole problem. And they see some people running hybrid systems, like say like Decred or something, which has on-chain voting, which is quite interesting. You could try to solve it that way, but also there's other caveats of doing it that way as well. So, but I still think from what I've looked at so far, it still is GPU based voting. But in terms, it's just moving it. I still think long term that it will succeed. I'm not sure how much you'd really have to change it. I still think it's more so tweaking the mining. Again, changing that playing field so it levels everyone out. But in terms of further changing proof of work, I guess you got to really this thing after that is really pool centralization as well. Because pool centralization is obviously a massive problem on Bitcoin as well, even though it's not really acknowledged. Obviously, You've got Bitmain's pool and BTC.com, which I think we're up to like something like 44%, and people weren't talking about it, which is quite strange because they're all owned by the same people. And that's something that just long term obviously needs to spread. I think there's some talk about that, trying to fix that But I think that's really the other end of it's just the other issue that really needs to be solved currently.
Sure. Well, Plankton, Gert, let's pivot a little bit in terms of this conversation about proof of work into a concept that I bring up with every coin project, and that is the concept of proof of useful work. Because we have so many compute cycles that are being thrown into cryptographic hashing and at a power consumption that is continuing to scale upwards. I'm not going to I'm not necessarily running out to the nearest tree to hug it because of all the damage that crypto has done. And I'm not saying we're going to boil the oceans dry or whatever because of crypto mining, but we are increasing. Objectively, we're increasing the amount of silicon that's being diverted strictly to cryptographic hashing and the commensurate electrical use towards cryptographic hashing versus any other kind of cycle scavenging, any other kind of work. SETI, folding at home, cancer research, computational fluid dynamics, various simulations, video streaming, transcoding. I mean, we could go on for an hour just listing the uses of GPUs, alternate uses for GPUs. Where's all this headed if proof of work is being done on these GPUs instead of that stuff?
I think the first thing to argue is that it is useful work. I've seen the argument that it's completely non-useful, but I think to call it completely non-useful is a bit, misguided.
Sure, but that's not an answer. That's a counterframe.
I totally agree. Agree. But I think I think it should highlight that again. You've got the whole proof of work, proof of stake debate, and the whole crux behind that is that proof of work is not useful, and the thing is that makes it superior in that debate is the work. So I think just highlight that is quite highlight that point is quite crucial. People understanding proof of work, but in terms of useful work, I don't know. What's your take on it? What's your take on it?
Mine?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Go.
No, I mean, you're saying that can we not use these GPUs for different things? And the question is, would we buy those GPUs if we weren't crypto mining with them? So do they exist because we are crypto mining? Or are
that's a matter of public record. There's no disputing the fact.
And are we wasting?
Yeah, it's an undisputed fact that AMD and Nvidia have had record years because of crypto mining. There's no way to refute the gross sales receipts. They've gone to crypto mining. So my question is, where's proof of work headed, and is there a potential for a proof of useful work employing this silicon in something that is not just cryptographic hashing, but perhaps also something else?
Well, it's an interesting proposition. I think if there would be a way to secure a blockchain by doing work that can also be used, like for the things that you said, like folding at home, and using the computation for research benefits as well as securing a blockchain. I think it makes sense for somebody to adopt it, right? I mean, why would you let that opportunity go to waste?
Yeah. Well, I really tightly framed that question, so I hope that didn't seem overly manipulative. I agree with you. I think it would be great if we could do that. I'm hearing from a lot of coin projects that there are problems with that proposition as well.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to let that opportunity go. So if the opportunity was there, you'd be stupid not to use it. So in that sense,
I got to give you applause. Hold on, I've got a sound effect for that, guys. Smash the likes for Gert. I agree with him. This man is not mining in that office because it's cost prohibitive, it's disincentivized, and he wants to be green. You said it, not me. And I agree with you. I think that's a very valuable goal to think. Okay, to what extent are we firing coal? To what extent are we in this country? Are we using fracking to get at some of these petroleum products to then go feed the grid? We're doing crazy things to the earth, and then we're throwing more silicon at it.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not sure if you understood what I said completely.
By all means, explain it again.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that proof of work is useless. So I agree with Plankton's argument on why proof of work makes sense.
I don't disagree.
Given two opportunities, one being just hashing away, and whatever hash is not the right one is a useless computation, versus using your GPU to secure a blockchain and use the computations that are not useful for the blockchain to do some research. That's like a golden egg.
Yeah, agreed.
So I'm not saying you shouldn't. I mean, I'm not saying that you should stop proof of work until you have this. I'm saying if you have this, then switch over. But don't stop.
And I'm in complete agreement with you. Is all I'm saying. So I think I understood the first time, and I called you out. I called you out in praise the first time. So I agree, and I think that's awesome, sir. What I'd love to do,
Seth, I've got an interesting proposition actually. What if you had infinite energy, and the Earth wasn't with the Earth? Say if you had limitless amounts of energy, would you consider cryptographic hashing wasteful?
Well, there are fundamental problems with the laws of thermodynamics, and there are fundamental laws with the problems with the laws of thermodynamics. But by all means, I'll play along. And if I knew that I had infinite energy, a la solar, right? If I were able to harvest directly from lower orbit or something, and then create a pipeline straight down to Earth, would I see problems with what we're doing? Yes, because we are still, in the same way that going out and buying a Toyota Prius doesn't offset its own carbon footprint. You actually make it worse by mining the lithium to create the lithium-ion battery packs to create that new device. You're actually better off buying a 20-year-old used car running on petrol. So I disagree that having limitless energy is the fundamental problem. We're still creating new silicon products and gobbling them up as fast as we can. And the mentality of a miner, if I could buy every single GPU that came off the line, if I could afford every GPU that came off the line, I have financial incentive to do so. But if, like Gert says, I also have maybe even some financial incentive to use that same silicon to also provide solutions to real-world problems for third parties other than blockchains, I'd be a fool not to do that also. So that's kind of where I'm going. Then that actually isn't affected by whether or not there's limitless energy. That's affected by whether or not there's limitless resource on the Earth.
Just trying to see your thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but let me frame it this way. And here's an interesting counter proposal. What if we only had 50% of the usable energy that we have today? Would you still think that proof of work is useful? Because I don't think you would.
I think the pool. If the thing is, if the pool is smaller, if the pool is smaller, then obviously the GPUs are small. So they're equally as small. So it's a pool. it's not that if you've just got a lot. If Bitcoin's taking up this much hash rate, it's taking up this much power, halving it really doesn't do anything. It's the distribution of the devices. Like in the same way that you've got particular devices mining network. It's
Sorry,
not really.
I waved my head at a comment. Hyper Gadgets, who's been very complimentary of your team, by the way. So, guys, kudos again. Really appreciate you having on the show. You've got to know, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And having counterpoint is what it's all about. If we only ever agreed with each other, we'd never have new innovations, right? We would all just toe the line, or maybe be like Roger Ver and just keep expanding the block size. It's Satoshi's vision. But Hyper Gadget says, oh, snap, we need Thanos to chop our energy supply in half. I don't know that I want to do that.
I think it really comes back down to which one is better at a base level, and that comes back to the proof of stake, proof of work, just model. It's I think currently, even if you did take up the size, it fills up the sector. I think it's still it can stop growing. Like it doesn't have to keep growing. If it stops growing, as long as it remains distributed, it's fine. So it doesn't just have to keep growing. It's just, yeah. Do you see my point?
I think I do. Yeah, I think I do. And I'm hopeful that it doesn't necessarily grow, that it doesn't grow unnecessarily. I think that's my core hope, is that it doesn't grow unnecessarily. But if history is any indicator, it's growing as fast as it can. And it's like silicon is being produced and purchased just as fast as humanly possible. People being paid less than what we consider a livable wage in terrible working conditions, working through the night with their children to try to make this stuff exist so that we can buy it up at our whim with our first world privilege to go mine crypto. I don't want to. I'll cue the violin music, right? But
no. I totally agree. I think it's a massive problem, and it hopefully only gets more efficient. But I think the reality of humans right now is they're very wasteful. But it's something we have to tackle as a group. So
what
unfortunately,
I'm hoping is that you guys have shown such great thought leadership in this space in terms of wanting to be ahead of ASICs and wanting to be ahead of botnets. And I really appreciate that. I don't think anybody can argue that your team hasn't been conscientious in that regard and attempted to be really good stewards of your blockchain and of the blockchain, capital B blockchain, right? The public face of blockchain in that regard. What I'm wondering is if you'd be willing to come back onto the show, perhaps with another coin project, to discuss a couple of issues surrounding proof of work, your proposed solutions, and see if we can find common ground with some other coin projects in sort of a loose public consortium.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I promise it'll probably be a little less heated than we got just now. That's about as heated as my show ever gets. I mentioned tough questions. I'm not here to do an expose. Again, I think you guys are doing great work, and I don't think you can be faulted for the work that you've done and the direction that you've taken. You're doing what I think you have to do to secure your network and ensure the future longevity of the project. Like you said, with the foundation, ensure that it even can be a project 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So I think you're making the right moves. If I can just ask, and then I promise I'll let you go. We've been going for an hour and 45 minutes, guys. So I know, Gert, you've got things to get to. But if I can just ask, as far as with your project, these are the two most important questions, I promise, and then we leave it. First question is 5 to 10 years from now, whatever the outcome is, knock on wood, heaven forbid, the project goes chain dead. I would never wish this on any project. But the work goes up in smoke. The repos are all that's left. What we have on the record today. When people look back at today, what do you want people to remember about the project, the team, or your efforts?
I think what's most important to me, and what is the reason that I choose to stick to Vertcoin for as long as I have right now, and I don't see that change anyway in the future, is the fact that it has an idea of what a cryptocurrency and a financial system that's honest to all their users and all the people using it, they have a vision of how that would look and what components are needed to achieve that. And the only thing I would want for people to remember is the fact that we tried as hard as we could to achieve what we thought was the right thing. And we may not achieve it, we may achieve it. We'll keep trying until we either succeed or know that we cannot.
Awesome. So basically, it sounds like 5 to 10 years from now, you want to succeed or you want to die trying. You don't want to think about the possibility of this ever going belly up.
Well, I mean, the only way of it going belly up is that, we've exhausted all possible ideas and we didn't find a solution. Yeah, and then there's no shame in quitting after you tried everything, right? But I don't think it will take us only 5 to 10 years to try everything. It's probably longer. Awesome.
You're getting a lot of love in the comments for your response, by the way. I really appreciate that. And I think that's very admirable. I don't think anybody could argue today, based on the history of your project and your guys' efforts. I don't think anybody could argue that will not be the outcome for your team. So definitely appreciate you guys spending that time with me and showing your heart in an interview. Can I ask? So for the record, this is the most important question. I'm going to ask Plankton. Are you ready, Plankton?
Yep. Most
important question. When were you going to transfer me the 25,000 VTC you promised for this interview?
Yeah. No, it's really funny, the state of the space. It's just there's so much crap going on.
Yeah.
And it really you just kind of, I don't know, you just drop your jaw sometimes and just sort of really. But I think it's more of just as a market perspective. It's not really crypto in general. It is kind of, but
yeah,
it's just you're seeing a reflection of people's greed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Allow me to just. I'll clarify for anybody who's visiting from the Vertcoin community. That is a joke. Flack, tell them down in the comments. Did I ask for a bounty? Did you offer a bounty? Have I accepted bounties for other interviews? Flack will tell you. The answer is no. No, I don't do these interviews for bounties. Did I offer you guys a list of questions before we started the interview? Also, no.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
I mean, if the exchange is free, then I need to have my hands free to ask questions and to allow the community to ask questions real time in the comments without guarding you from something that might be considered inappropriate, right? But in this space, certainly in terms of the project goals, we need clarity, we need transparency. In terms of developer anonymity, there are myriad reasons why developer anonymity is really important, and I fully support that. But the project itself and its goals and the efforts so far and the future roadmap absolutely have to be transparent. And we have to have these kinds of conversations without bias, in my mind, without bias. And I think that a bounty offered before, just to say nice things, I think it takes away your credibility when the interview is bought and paid for.
It certainly does. And I think in light of that, I think transparency is also one of the driving values behind Vertcoin, because the developers of Vertcoin are very approachable, and there's no question of limits. I mean, if you want to know what drives us, you can just ask and we'll answer. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to put on a show over here.
Awesome.
That doesn't make sense.
Awesome. Well, I know that you're very much loved by your community, as evidenced by all the emojis in your Discord. Like half of them are your face.
That started out funny, and then at some point it's still funny.
I was gonna say, it hasn't gotten.
I'm pretty sure that there's people like recording this interview and then making emojis out of whatever I'm doing. It's
Yeah, we got new source material.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, I really appreciate you being on the show. I know we don't have any more time. I've very much overstayed my welcome, and I really appreciate you spending the extra time to sure. Make sure that the community had their questions answered. But cool. Can't give you enough high praise based on how you've conducted yourselves in the interview leading up to it. Your community is very supportive. Everyone keeps asking when Gert-Coin. I think they really want you to fork.
No, it's like an extra coin.
So it's like
they don't want to rebrand or anything. It's just, you know, they.
Maybe that can be the new atomic unit for Vertcoin is the Gert.
No. No.
Humble suggestions. Maybe I'll contribute to your repo. Be like, you know, when Gert.
Well, write a pull request.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Guys, if you haven't already checked out the Vertcoin project, if you're visiting from somewhere else and you're not actively involved, first off, if you're a supporter, be strongly vocally supportive in the comments. Be strongly vocally supportive wherever you are. If you feel like you have more questions, or you feel like right now your inclination is towards being a detractor, ask better questions. Where can they find you guys? Where's the best place to talk to you? Gert and Plankton.
Discord. So I practically live on Discord, basically 24/7, as Gert can probably tell you. Yeah, if you come in, like I can literally, you can ask me anything, and I'll literally talk about it with you for hours. So we're very, you can come in and talk to us anytime. We're always there. Always, if you want to learn about stuff, you want to talk about Lightning networks, how they work. I think James could obviously go on for hours about them. But yeah, just interesting. I just really like having people having an interesting cryptocurrency in general, and just how it all works, and really wanting to know how it works for themselves. I think that's the most important thing I really want to get through to people, is just have an interest and really sort of find out for yourself. Because there's a lot of propaganda and just stuff goes around, and I think just people doing just taking responsibility and really, I know, just come and ask. We're happy to teach, happy to go through, and all the positives and negatives of all that stuff. So anyway.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, appreciate you being on the show. Thank you again. Can't speak highly enough to clearly the character you've exhibited in the interview, and the way that your community supports you. You have a bright future. You don't need me to tell you that. But appreciate your time, guys. Thanks so much, and we'll be in touch very, very soon.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Thanks very much, Seth.